My name is Louis De La Power. I'm the engineering lead at Claris. This is Bridget Lum. She's the product manager at Claris. Welcome to Creating Cohesive Solutions, Leveraging the Claris Platform. Very excited to be here with you today. Just in case you're wondering, this is what we look like. I'm the one on the right. She's the one on the left. I want to keep that going. So,
all right. So we only have an hour. There's no time for introductions or funny anecdotes. Instead, we're just going to jump right in. The agenda for this session is going to be in the form of a use case and a demonstration that I've injected a little bit too much of both of our personalities into to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. And we'll spend the rest of the time getting onto the fun part, which is actually building out this use case. Now, for those of you that don't know, Louis and I both like to surf, and we like to share that experience with people. Example A. For those of you that remember this commercial of Lily surfing and using FileMaker. And example B, my amazing artwork. I'll take applause for that. So Louis and I, let's say we also run a small surf art gallery. We have a part-time intern, his name is Giuliano, who helps us look after the gallery and keep the lights on. But our dream someday is to grow our art studio, which is called Data Swell, so we can quit our boring day jobs. Louis and I created a FileMaker app to track and manage a lot of our day-to-day work. Now, it's a pretty sweet setup. We keep track of all our artist contacts, storing their information, headshots, and samples of their art. We also have a system that schedules the artists based off their availability that we enter into the solution, and their space in the actual space that's in the studio so we can book them. Sorry, just lost its place. Now, for a few months, we've just had our email up on our website and had the artists reach out to us to try and schedule bookings at our gallery. And our scheduling system works beautifully. But I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is the overwhelming amount of positive response we've gotten and submissions from the community to be a part of our gallery. The bad news is, unfortunately, Louis' least favorite job in the world is emails. And that's
emailing, less time surfing.
That's all we're stuck doing nowadays, trying to keep up with all of the scheduling and getting this data into FileMaker. Until, drumroll please, we started leveraging the entire Claris platform. How many of you guys saw that coming? So instead of the endless flood of emails and playing calendar Tetris with artists and manually putting that data into our solution, I'd like to show you the new way that we went about doing things, gathering uniform submissions from potential artists with all the information that we need to screen them and schedule them in our gallery. Here, you can see our contact layout from our existing FileMaker solution, where we store the details of the artists we book. Now, on the left, you can see a web form that we've put together. Now, playing the role of an artist, let's say Miki Dora, a famous surfer, I can access this form from the website and submit a proposal for a gallery spot and time with my information. I can propose a session name, as well as select the reservation time that works best for me to show my art. Then, I can enter a title of some of my work and put some submissions of my artwork so that we can screen these artists to make sure we're not just letting anyone into this gallery. It's high art. And now you can see the artist receives a confirmation email that they've submitted their proposal and will be hearing back from us. Switching back to myself, checking the calendar we've set up, we just got a submission from the ghost of Miki Dora. I wasn't kidding when I said that Data Swell was growing like crazy. It's already reached the afterlife too, apparently. Now, we have it marked as tentative since we need to review the art and see if it's a good fit. With the help of our intern, Giuliano, he's able to review the artist's submissions and either approve or deny these requests based on our acceptance criteria. Miki is an obvious yes. So when he's approved in Studio, you can see on the left, or on the right, that his art is now in Studio as well as his contact. And we've also updated on the calendar side in Studio for his session to be confirmed. And in the case of an artist being rejected, we can automatically send them an email apologizing and open that time slot back up for other artists to book. Well, that's, that's less time emailing and more time surfing.
Awesome.
OK. All right. I'm sorry. For those of you that guessed that this was a session for us to pitch a really cool and up-and-coming art studio, that's actually later tonight at the Renaissance Bar. No, we're actually here not just to pitch something that just the two of us love, like surfing. We're here to pitch to you something we all love, which is solving a problem the Claris way, being problem solvers. Louie and I's goal is to show you how to take advantage of the entire Claris development platform at your disposal by walking you through how we solved for this hypothetical pickle we're in, and more importantly, why we solved it the way we did. Now, who's ready for the fun part? Now, before we jump into the solution mode, let's break down the problem. The first hurdle we run into, there we go. The first hurdle that we run into is being able to collect submissions from artists in a uniform fashion. This alone will save us the time of reading all of these emails, requesting more information from those who didn't supply everything, and make sure that nothing gets lost in the shuffle. Now, Louie and I sat down and evaluated our options on how we can solve this problem. Our first thought was WebDirect. But one, we don't have the licensing to be able to support this approach. And two, even if we did, we're already growing so fast, and WebDirect wasn't built to scale for an unpredictable user base like our size. Also, we want a modern-looking web front end for this form that's dynamic for different devices. Next, we thought about the idea of custom web publishing. But again, even with Louie's superior coding knowledge, we don't have the money or resources to be able to support building and maintaining a custom web front end for this project. Third, we thought about a third-party service like JotForms. Although a viable alternative, that's again more money, another subscription to juggle, and another skill to learn and make sure it doesn't break if we integrate it with our existing system, once we're successfully able to integrate it with our existing system. Our fourth and final option was Claris Studio. It's distributable on the web with dynamic UI, made to scale for unpredictable user sizes, and it's a part of the Claris platform, which means it has a deep first-class integration with Connect and FileMaker. And for some, yes, there may be a slight learning curve when it comes to onboarding, just like any product in market nowadays. But being a part of the Claris platform, it caters to our expertise and strives to ensure that we're supported every step of the journey. Can anyone guess what option we went with? Now, before we hit the ground running, I want to quickly touch base on a few overarching concepts of Studio that Louie and I will be referencing back to as we build. For some of you, this might be brand new. For others, this might just be a fun review. In Claris Studio, there are named users, those who are invited to your team and who must sign in to use views in Claris Studio. And there are anonymous users. Anonymous users are anyone who's given a view with a public sharing link, i.e. the forms, and they don't have to sign in. Named users are broken down into 2 roles currently. A team manager can add users to the team, promote other members to manager, create and modify views and hubs and in developer mode, and edit data in all views. A team member, on the other hand, can view and edit data in the views, but can't modify the design of a view or create one. And if you remember from Rob's keynote, you may want to check out his session tomorrow to learn some of the new exciting additions that we have coming for these role-based permissions. A view is a way to present and work with your data. Each view is associated with a single table at the time that you create that view. And you can make multiple views that access data from the same table. Views are akin to layouts in FileMaker. Now, think of a hub as an app in Claris Studio. It's not a one-to-one comparison, but it's a collection of views and data for a specific purpose and for a specific group of people. You can share views with team members at a hub level. In concept, a hub is similar to a FileMaker Pro app, but the data is not bound at the hub level, as you can add these same views across multiple different hubs. And lastly, in Claris Studio, data is stored in tables behind the scenes. A table is a named collection of data pertaining to a subject, such as customers or tasks that consists of a record. I think you all are pretty familiar with tables, so I don't need to go too much in depth into that. Claris Studio, one thing to call out though, is Claris Studio has a lot more fields than FileMaker Pro. The main difference is that Claris Studio has more field types than FileMaker, but they all map back to the essential FileMaker fields that you all know. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get to building something to get uniform artist submissions for our gallery. Oh, I went back.
Little review, it's fine.
So it's tables, not table occurrences.
Tables, yes.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna make sure it didn't play. All right, so first I'm going to create a hub as a starting place to add a view. I'm going to name this hub gallery, and then I'm going to add a view to it. By now, I think you all might have deduced that a form view would be the best way to go about solving this problem. And today, I'm going to start from scratch with new data, as I want this view to be started from scratch. Now, along with the proposals form view is a proposals form spreadsheet. And in hindsight, naming it proposals form was not the best idea. But the proposals form spreadsheet will come in handy later as submissions start to come in, and I can manage, filter, and group within the spreadsheet view a lot of this data. But we'll touch more on the spreadsheet later. So now I just want to get building. So let's create this view and go to the start page. We're going to start adding the fields that I want. Now, Louie and I have sat down already and fleshed out what requirements we needed for this form. First of all, we need to collect some information about who the artist is so that we can review them and their work and get in contact with them if we'd like to book them. Now, as I mentioned before, and as you can see, there's a lot more field types than there are in FileMaker. This is to allow the developer to create a richer UI experience with these fields. For example, there's a drop-down and a single choice that a developer can select depending on their requirements and how they'd like to present it. But these both map back to a value list in FileMaker Pro. Okay, I'm going to start adding short text fields. I'm going to start adding fields. First, I'm going to add a short text field to get their full name. Next, I'm going to add a phone field to collect their phone number, and an attachment field to get their headshot, so I can post that when they book a gallery. And then lastly, an email field to get their email. Then I'm going to add a drop-down for reservations that we will be filling with the reservation times. Now that I have all, Now that I have all the personal information that I need a way to reserve a time slot to show their art if they do end up getting booked. For this, I'm going to use a drop-down. You may also notice that I added fields several different ways. First, from the top object menu, quickly in situ, and also in the fields, or I can pin it open for rapid development and prototyping. Okay, we have a few basic fields in the form. I think we're ready to have just a little bit of fun. On the right, you can see the pane that I've grossly neglected up until now. In this pane, you can see that it gives the developer options to customize or edit specific attributes of this object and field, but like placeholder text. What I want to do is edit our drop-down options. I have the option to create static custom options, but since the reservation slots are important records that we need stored in Studio and FileMaker, I'm going to create a table. So for my drop-down options, I'm going to populate this from a different table in Studio. What table, you say? Why, I'm so glad you asked, because we're going to build that table. Since I don't have any other tables currently, I'm going to make another spreadsheet and import a CSV. I have a list of slots with start time and end time stamps, as well as the reservation name. You can see how Studio automatically maps the start and end timestamp fields, and if I have extra fields I didn't want to add, I can simply select Don't Import. All right. Now that we have that table set up, let's go back to our form and select the drop-down, and we can populate this. We can populate the reservation drop-down with that table that we've just created. But wait, for this form, I actually don't. And you can see the mapping of fields from that table. But actually, for this dropdown, I don't want to show anything before April 3rd, because we'll be recovering from Engage. So I'm going to filter out anything on or before April 3rd. And as you can see, I could also go about filtering by calculation or sorting based on my requirements. All right. Next, I'm going to add a biography field. And I'm going to add this as a rich text field so that the artists can get fancy with their editing. I mean, they're artists. We need to give them their creative outlets somewhere. And for this page, I think I'm all set on the data we want. I do know I need more fields to collect their portfolio, but I don't want them scrolling forever. Before we add another page, let's make sure this form looks great and give it the data swell artistic touch. So first, I'm going to add a few static lines to this form just to break things up and make it more visually appealing. Please remember, I'm also not a designer, so it's hypothetical. Next, I want to personalize my header by adding an image as a backdrop and the data swell logo. Now, I can play around and see what looks nice, resizing header, the image, and I want to give this page a more appropriate name than start page. Artist proposal for data swell. Again, I'm going to play around and see if maybe I like the logo on the right better. No, don't like that. Perfect there. And lastly, I'm going to go to page settings where I can set a few fields I'm going to go to page settings where I can set requirements at a page level. You can see I've selected require all fields, which then sets all of the objects in this page to be required. But sometimes artists don't have headshots, so I'm going to go specifically to that object and deselect that field is required. And lastly, for this page, I'm lazy. And I did see that I can check that I can use this header for all pages. So I'm absolutely going to check that off. OK, for this page, we're all set. Now, let's quickly put together. Let's put together another page to collect some of their work that we can review. Before we start collecting, I want to add a static text box to give them a bit of context as to what they're doing. Otherwise, it's a little bit jarring. Now, we're going to add an attachment field where artists can drop their portfolios. Here's an example of where I might want to switch my display label for this object to be different than the field name. Instead of saying attachment, saying place image here. And changing the field name to differ from the display label name. Now, I could just mandate in my text block that all artists must convert their collection of art to a PDF and submit that PDF in this field. But it's a Surf Art Studio, and we're chill here. So I'm going to provide some other options. Currently, the attachment field in Studio only supports adding one attachment, but that doesn't mean there aren't workarounds in the meantime. And some subtle foreshadowing there. Let's say I want to allow the artist to submit up to 10 images or PDFs or whatever it may be. Again, I could just dump 10 attachment fields onto the form, but artist portfolio sizes may range, and 10 empty attachment fields sitting on a form, if I'm filling that form out, I'm actually just not filling that form out. So I'm going to leverage the object actions. Now, adding a second field attachment field and naming it portfolio 2, let's say, I'm going to click the lightning thing in the upper right corner and set this object to show only when the first attachment field is not empty. So when an artist has put an attachment in the first one. Now, I'm having fun here, I guess. Now I'm going to add a third attachment field and name this portfolio 3. Again, I'm going to go to the object actions and leverage showing this object when portfolio 1 is not empty and portfolio 2 is not empty.
Is it auto enter those, or was that you just did that quickly?
I just did some demo magic there. But as you can see, you could also leverage calculations in order to hide or show objects, as well as use the and or functionality. And now for the fourth field, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go through all that. And with some demo magic, then I'm going to go ahead and add 7 more fields to the form. And there's one thing left to do. When an artist submits, I want to display a confirmation that they've reached the end of the form and give them instructions, a little bit of instructions on what to expect next. These instructions obviously play into some of the other requirements that we're going to build out next. And, you know, one more final touch. There you go.
Wait, are you saying you're already done? I thought you were going to take the whole hour. Now I have to present?
Yep, just like that, we have a form ready to go. And now I probably just need to do a bit of testing, submitting some records, and then I can enable form sharing and go crazy with the URL. Email it to everyone I know, embed it in an iframe on our website, post it to TikTok. The world is my oyster. You already saw at the beginning how the end user would submit the form. Each form submission equates to 1 record that lands in our form proposal spreadsheet. As submissions start flowing in, this is a great place for me to sort, filter, and group submissions. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I promised the artists they'd get a confirmation email upon submission. Louis, do you care to help me out here?
You better believe it. So in our art studio, we want to be able to notify artists when we receive a proposal. We also want to ensure that once a proposal is made, it can't be accidentally double booked. We'll divide those two flows into two separate workflows in Claris Connect. We'll first create the email confirmation flow in our messages project, as this project contains all of the external communication that we have. But first, why do we use Claris Connect? We know that we can do integrations with FileMaker. We know that there's other tools available. What is it about Claris Connect that makes it such a powerful automation tool to use with the Claris platform? We believe it's because Claris Connect offers security, scalability, and observability. Connect automatically stores and manages your third-party connections. It's scalable because it provides fast, cost-effective resource allocation depending on your needs, and enables a holistic view of how complex systems interact via flow history. So let's dive into the project that we were talking about earlier and see how this can be built, just to get us up to speed. Can we go back a slide?
Press the back button.
My tech support, I love it.
He's the engineer, remember that.
So we'll head into our communication flows project. This particular project saves all the connections for our external and internal communication. Within each project, each flow can use the app connections that you see up in the top left corner there, right next to the flow history. The connections can be automatically selected and managed by clicking the App Connections tab and then testing each individual connection. From here, I can make sure that my Claris Studio connection works correctly, my FileMaker server works correctly, my SendGrid account, and my Slack account, all the integrations that I use. Once I've done that, I can create a flow inside of the project that leverages those connections. And for this particular flow, I'll use the record field updated trigger provided by the Studio connector to ensure that anytime a proposal is submitted with an email, we can use SendGrid in order to send the information. I'll select the proposal table that Bridget created earlier and the email field for my email. Now, normally you'd have to test your connection, but because Claris Connect and Claris Studio work together, we automatically pull that information for you. There's no more need to be able to do anything destructive like create or add a record. Once I've added the individual step, I'll add the send email action from SendGrid and just really quickly use a little bit of demo magic to fill out the fields. I'll use Connect step data to go through and pull some of the information I have for my step. And I'll use the step data search functionality to really quickly find the email that I'm looking for in the email.value. I'll add a reply to email, a from email, fill out the name and then the subject, and again, pull out some demo magic to add a custom template so that our email looks good to our artists. It's important, they're artists, they care about these things. So once I add the template, I'll scroll down and save it, and that's it. Now, when an artist submits the proposal, this flow will execute, and I'll get a confirmation email that looks just like this.
And what if the email is invalid?
That's a good call out, Bridget. You should probably do something about that. So what I'll do here is use an if statement within Connect to check and make sure that the email is valid. What I'll do here is I'll go back into my step data, type email.value to pull up that same email value, select the value of the email, and then ask it to ensure that the email is valid.
How are you getting the emails in here? Is that coming, is SendGrid out, right? So
The email that's coming in here is actually coming from my trigger step, which is automatically pulled by Claris Connect. Once I have the if statement structured, we'll see that again in a little bit. Once I have the if statement structured, I'll quickly rename it so I don't forget it later on. And then I'll take the SendGrid action and nest it within the email. Now, the email will only fire when a valid email is received.
And the email is from, it's the email that the artist submitted on the studio form. And so Connect is pulling that.
Form is the initial trigger.
Yes.
So it's not like you're passing an artist sending you an email. It's just on your form. Yeah.
One important point there, I mentioned it really quickly, I'll say it again because it's really cool. Previous to this, you had to go into your third-party connection and actually test it by creating or deleting a record, doing something destructive. Because Claris Connect and Claris Studio are all part of the same platform, we can do that and pull the relevant information without you needing to take any actions.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. The other thing that Claris Connect gives us, that was part of the observability that I talked before, is flow history. Flow history is really important. It gives us observability and traceability into each particular step within our flow. Provides visibility into both the input and output of every step as the flow is executed. It provides the step data that we saw earlier that allows us to pull the information like the email without needing to go through and pre-populate it. And then it also enables email notifications when a flow fails. So let's take a quick look at flow history. So for this, I'll jump into the history tab inside my project, like we saw earlier. I'll select the email confirmation flow that we just created. And from here, I can filter not only on the flow, but on the date range. So I'll pick the last week just to see everything that executed within the last week. And I get a filter for that week. I can also filter by the status. I can look to see any flows that are successful. We've had a bunch. Any flows that are pending. There happens to be a couple. Maybe there's something with SendGrid or something like an error. And once I find one with an error, if I want to see what it is, I can scroll in and look and, yeah, Bridget was right. I tried to execute this flow without a valid email, and I got an error. Cool. The other thing that I can do with flow history is tell it to notify me whenever a flow has failed. When I turn on the notification toggle in the top left that you saw there, and the flow fails, as we saw earlier, I'll get an email that looks like this. It tells me what flow has failed and provides a link directly to that flow, so I can really quickly debug and see what's going on.
Can you notify by other things other than email?
At this moment, no, it's just email. Cool. So this is just a little warm-up. One trigger, one action to send an email, just to see how things go. The next thing we want to do when the proposal is saved is we want to actually push that data to our FileMaker file. We want to go through, and here we'll use the new record created trigger from Studio Connector. We'll save the proposal inside of FileMaker, and then we're going to use the run script step in the new FileMaker connector to run a script, check to see if our contact exists. If it doesn't exist, we'll create a new contact, retrieve the headshot, update the headshot in FileMaker. If it does exist, we'll just update the contact and link it to the proposal, and then generate a reservation ID. Now, this is kind of new. You may have seen the run script before. This is an enhanced version of the run script action from the FileMaker connector. In this particular case, I can choose to either trigger the script and wait for the result, which is how it works today, or if I want to do something more scalable, I can execute the script without waiting. For this particular action, I want to wait for the result, because I'm going to check in my FileMaker file to ensure that the contexts are unique. So this is the script that I'm going to fire. What I'm doing here is I'm going to set a variable that's passed from Claris Connect. I'm then going to do a JSON format elements on the script parameter to ensure that it is actually valid JSON. I'll do a quick check to see if what I've sent it is valid. If not, I will exit the script with an error. If it is valid, I'll set the variable to the email that I have in the payload. I'll go to my contacts layout. I'll enter find mode. And then if the variable that I set is not empty, I will set the context of email with a quote, because you have to quote the emails because of the @ symbol, and then eventually execute the flow. Now, I've done this so that later on I can update the logic inside of FileMaker, and I don't need to change my flow at all. All I have to do is make a few changes to the script. I'll perform the find. I'll then get the found count. If the found count is 0, I'll set the contact ID to an empty string. If there's more than 0 records, so anything, I'll go to the record, the first one, and then I'll set the variable of contact ID to the primary key of the contact. Finally, I'll exit the script with that variable, and then we'll hop back into Connect, where I'll use that variable to finish out the flow. I'll drop into the flow history here so you can actually see what this looks like when we execute it. One thing I want to call out earlier, similar to the email, you see here I have the event ID, I have the record, and I have the operation type with each individual event. Every event that you get from the Studio connector or the FileMaker connector comes with these values. We provide the update description so you know exactly what has happened, whether a field is removed or added. We also provide the full record with all of the fields nested within the record, the ID, as well as the table definition that that record is a part of. So all of this information is instantly available to you anytime a flow is executed.
And how long do you keep those for?
It is saved for 30 days. The other piece that I'll pull out, this is new, is the FileMaker record. I want to save the proposal each time the FileMaker record is completed. I have the fields as well as the individual external ID and the ID, which we'll see later on. What I'm going to do here then, I'm going to go through and check to see if the contact exists. I'm going to create the record. If the record does not exist, I'm going to pull the headshot from Studio and then upload it to FileMaker using the upload to container script step. What you can see here is an example of the response from the upload to container script step containing all the information for the record. Awesome. So with this, we've saved the proposal. Sorry. Sorry, just got a little out of date. 1 second. So when this flow is executed, what we'll see here is the confirmation email on the left-hand side. As we saw earlier, we'll see the new contact record on the right-hand side along with the headshot automatically populated. So we've done 2 things so far. We've emailed the artist with a confirmation, and we've saved the proposal in FileMaker, checked for duplicate contacts, and then uploaded the applicable records back into FileMaker. This particular flow introduces the FileMaker connector, which Bridget mentioned earlier in the keynote this morning. This particular connector is something that's new to our platform, combines the FileMaker OData and Data API technologies. Cool.
All right. Back to Studio for a little bit. Wow. Like Louis said, we're already going to save so much time having this uniform data and automatically handling, emailing to the artist, and pushing this information to our FileMaker solution. But here's our next problem. As Louis mentioned earlier, neither Louis and I have time to go through all of these proposals. But you know who does? Our wonderful intern, Giuliano. I feel like a spreadsheet view isn't super ideal, though, for Giuliano to be reviewing all these proposals with artists' images that he'll be studying all day. Instead, I think a gallery view is a good way to present these proposals. But I don't want Giuliano to see everything. He's just an intern. It might overwhelm him. So I just want to present him with the proposals that he needs to review and have him change those statuses. So I'm going to create a view called Gallery Art and choose that the data be populated by the same spreadsheet as the proposals. Now you can see a few example proposals that we have here. And in order to keep track of these statuses of whether an artist is to be reviewed, approved, or denied, I'm going to add a drop-down field to our table. I'm going to add a new field in developer mode by expanding the record and adding a status with what I mentioned before, pending review, approved, or rejected. Yeah. The same thing. Once he's completed the review, I don't want him to see the approved or rejected ones. I only need him to see the backlog of things he has to review. So I'm going to add a filter to the top to filter by the status of being equal to pending review. But those 2 records already existed, which means they don't have the flag of pending review. To catch that, I'm going to add a status is empty to catch those that haven't been reviewed yet. Now Giuliano can quickly go through the backlog and approve or deny based on the criteria that we've set for the proposals. But you see, a new record isn't being created every time we do this. So how do I update things in FileMaker without creating a new record?
I got you, Bridget. So we're going to create another flow to process the acceptance or rejections from our intern, Giuliano. The proposal accepted flow is a trigger with a record field trigger. We're going to get the proposal session that we saved earlier. We're going to confirm the proposal section. We're going to find the artwork. We're going to create the artwork, retrieve the link, and then finally upload it to FileMaker. Slightly different than what we saw earlier, where we used a script step. We're going to use the find action within the new FileMaker connector. As we saw earlier, I'll grab the pertinent step data from my step data pane here. In this case, again, I'll use searching just to speed things up. I'm looking for the calendar ID, so I can look up what calendar event they reserved us for. Once I have that selected, I'll put that into the get proposal session action. Then I will go through and check to see if the particular status is accepted. Now, we're going to go over this in depth, but I really quickly want to call out that if you remember, Bridget added a dropdown there. And dropdowns are not always simply just strings. For the database, sometimes they're UIDs, and so it can be difficult to work with them. So one of the things we give you with the Studio connector is both the resolved value, the user-readable value, and the real value, the ID. This allows you to swap back and forth as needed. It allows your flows to remain flexible.
Can they be interchangeable?
They can be interchangeable, yes. From here, I'll go through and find the existing artwork. Just to see what this looks like, again, I'll drop into flow history so we can see what this execution looks like. I'll pull up the history as well. I'll mock the accepted, click update. On the right-hand side, you're going to see the flow pending in just a moment. Once that's complete, we can pop into it and just see that all the relevant things have happened. We performed our find. We didn't find any records. We checked the status is accepted, and we uploaded the content. I want to round trip this, just kind of show you what this looks like, because it's really cool to see the data moving from Studio to FileMaker. So let's go through one more time. We'll trigger this again. I'm going to move Connect out of the way. I've got my empty FileMaker database on the right-hand side. I'm going to go through, use a little demo magic to accept it once more. I'll click Update, and in just a moment, you'll see the image get pushed into FileMaker where we could save our history. As you folks know, you can use FileMaker's awesome container info steps or calculations in order to pull the relevant data from it.
What happens if the FileMaker server is unavailable?
For this particular case, it would error out. Well, one of the things I didn't mention that Claris Connect does have is the ability to retry a flow. We have what's called an auto replay option. It's something you have to turn on, but you can auto retry. One of the other things that I didn't mention here, before we move on, I want to quickly call it out. Anyone that's used the FileMaker connector before with the find action, you'll know that if you try to do a search and you couldn't find any records, it would return an error. One of the enhancements we made to the find action is that if you make a search and it doesn't return any records, it just returns an empty array and a status of successful. This allows you to reduce the amount of error catching you need to do within your flow, makes your flows much more simple. Cool. So we've shown you Claris Connect step data and provided you an overview of the Studio and FileMaker connectors. But I mentioned that we're going to talk about the format for both of those connectors because they're very unique. What you see on the right-hand side, apologies for the JSON, but I like it, is the JSON representation of a particular field, or of a record rather. On the left-hand side, you see the key piece of the data that we provide to you with the format. As I mentioned, we provide the ID, which for Studio is an integer. We provide you the def ID, which is the table, which is also an ID. We also provide you the external ID. And if you're really keen on what you saw in the keynote earlier from Rob, that external ID is actually the record ID or the row ID from FileMaker. So within Studio, if you're syncing that data back and forth, we also provide you that ID as well.
Is it the FileMaker record ID or the
So record or row ID from FileMaker, yes. Okay. Yeah. We're going to see that once more when we get into the FileMaker format. As I mentioned earlier as well, we also have the resolved fields. All the fields in Studio that have more than one data type have both a resolved value, the user-facing value, the things that a user would consume, like accepted or pending, and the ID, the thing that the database might keep. You can see that here with the options up along the top, and then the values down at the bottom. Within Claris Connect, because we know that you need to swap back and forth often, we also provide you with the options. So not only do you have the actual values, which in this case is mold and shellfish, I don't know why I picked that, you also get the options of mold, animal nana, and shellfish with the IDs. So you can use them as you needed. Cool.
Are all the IDs persistent?
In Studio, yes.
But not on the FileMaker side, though. The record ID can change, right?
If you're, say, importing new records, or if you did a clone and you're importing new, yes, they'll change. When we get to the FileMaker port, I'll actually talk about that as well. The FileMaker connector allows you to handle that rather gracefully. Yeah. Cool. The new FileMaker connector, as I mentioned, offers quite a bit of enhancements. It combines both the FileMaker OData and Data API to provide scalability with reduced impact to your FileMaker server. Anyone that's used the FileMaker Data API before knows that every time you've created an action, you first also have to have a session. That session puts pressure on your FileMaker server. One of the things we're able to do with the new FileMaker connector is use OData where appropriate and reduce the pressure on your FileMaker server. This allows you to scale up much more cost efficiently and keeps your resources for your people using FileMaker itself. We also support both the FileMaker server self-hosted or on-premise, if you prefer that term, or cloud deployments. There's no difference between the technology. It doesn't matter which one you use. All the actions are available. They all work the exact same way. And it's designed to work seamlessly with both the Studio connector as well as the other Connect utilities. So far today, Connect utility-wise, you've seen the JSON pieces and also the Get UUID, which is the cryptography utility. Studio is a cloud platform, so it's on our servers. We host it for you. FileMaker could be either hosted on our cloud or on-premise. Similar to the Studio connector, the new FileMaker connector also provides a new format. This is a format that is not OData or the Data API. It's something new. And we've done this very intentionally to try to give you the same structure that you'd have with the Studio connector. You have the ID, which in this case is not the record ID. In this case, it is the primary key of your table, if you can identify that from OData. And there's a whole set of logic on how your OData key gets picked. We also provide the external ID. As I mentioned earlier with the Studio connector, we provide the same one. So if you have the external ID on the Studio side, it's the same external ID on the FileMaker side. We provide the def ID, which in this case is the name of the table, as well as fields, the user-defined fields, nested in the fields object. Cool. So we have a little bit of time, not much, but a little bit. I'd like to take a little bit of time and talk about some of the things that we're working on next, some of the things that we're excited to preview to you, with the caveat that none of these things may actually come to market. They're just ideas that we have. We'd like to share them with you and receive feedback from you.
But the louder you cheer for different ones, we'll gauge things differently.
So the first I'd like to show you is a Connect utility. I mentioned the power of flow history earlier, but that flow history is really stuck inside of Connect. You have to go to the UI in order to get to it. So what you see here is a flow with an intentional error that we're going to catch on this on-error step, and a new action called the log flow execution action. This action accepts any of the connectors already defined in your project. When a flow is executed, it's going to take that information, and it's going to push it into your FileMaker or Studio table that you designate. So in this particular case, I'll run this flow. It's going to get an error, which is intentional. We wanted to see that. I'm going to use the on-error utility inside of Claris Connect in order to catch that error and then push the log into FileMaker. If you look in the top portion of the FileMaker file, you see the flow information. And then in just a moment, you're going to see all the individual step pieces as well. This brings that observability and that flow history to you in your FileMaker database. You can search on it. You can debug it. You can use it for error tracing as you go. So each individual step is individually logged. Kind of cool, right? Yeah, I'm very excited for that. Cool. The next one, Robert showed at the keynote earlier. This is a Studio hub layout that you see. You'll notice in the top left corner, I've got data sources. These data sources is connected to my FileMaker file. In this case, I'm syncing my devices table from my Scarab server. And if I go to the bottom right corner, I can choose the sync data option, and it's going to very easily and very quickly push my data from FileMaker to Studio and write it back into FileMaker as appropriate. I'm not going to trigger it via the UI because I want to trigger it via Claris Connect. You see I've got a new trigger that we're introducing to the Studio connector, which is the data sync completed. This particular trigger can be triggered every time when you use all, error, or success. In this case, I'll use all so we can kind of show off what this looks like. I'm then going to use the if statement inside of Connect to check for the status. If the status has failed, meaning the sync didn't work, I want to get a message to my phone very quickly. So I'll use the Twilio message in order to send that. If it goes through OK, it's a little less of an emergency. I'll just push that to Slack so I can keep track of it. Just to show you what this looks like, I'll move Studio to the left, and I'll bring in a Slack channel just to see how this works in real time. Got my Slack channel on the right-hand side. I'm going to trigger the sync data within the Studio layout, or Studio UI there. The flow is going to execute, and on the right-hand side, we're going to see a message. It's going to tell me whether my sync was successful, how many records synced, and how many records failed. Cool. So I got the sync started. It was completed. I synced 1,023 records. All were successful. Nothing left to do. So that is the data triggered complete trigger that we're going to be adding to the Studio connector. It's designed to give you kind of an insight into the syncing of your data back and forth. But there's more here. I actually also want to be able to trigger from Claris Connect. I don't want to do it just from the Studio UI. And so we're adding a new action, the sync status action. What that allows you to do is use something like a scheduled trigger within Claris Connect to decide when you want to sync the data. So if you decide you wanted to do it in this flow as a webhook, I can trigger a webhook, and that's going to sync the status. On the right-hand side, you can see that not only was the status scheduled, but it was also completed almost instantaneously. So that's the data completed trigger in the Studio connector, as well as the sync source action in the Studio connector. Thank you. All right, I think we have time for one more. I'm very, very excited about this one. It's taken a long time to get here. Actually, before I get there, if you want to learn more about this, about data syncing and what that looks like, head to Robert's session tomorrow at 9 a.m. He's going to go more in depth on this individual piece of technology. Very, very cool. Excited to share it with you all. The next piece that I'd like to go over is record-based triggers from within the new FileMaker connector. So this particular flow that I have here is a new record created trigger from the FileMaker connector. It will trigger anytime a new record is created, a new record is created, a record is updated, or a record is deleted. I want to caveat this. Just pause for the moment. This is not using any sort of layout trigger or script. This is running directly from the database events within FileMaker. So in this particular case, I'm going to choose New Record Created, just to show off how this works. Nope. There we go. Okay. I'm going to choose New Record Created. I'll choose Continue here once it's completed. I'm going to choose the table that I'd like to watch after my connection. I'll choose in this case, my contacts table, maybe switch it over to anything else that we have, choose Save. Just to show off how this works, I'll send a message to Slack again, see how instantaneous it is. Now that I've got it configured, I'll go through and choose a custom channel within Slack in order to ensure that we can see this message. And just so you can see what this looks like, I'll push the record created and the ID of the record that's created. Just kind of show going back and forth. I'll choose Save here, move Connect out of the way, bring in Slack, as well as my FileMaker file, and we can see how this works. Cool. So from here, I will create a new record. I'm going to put in some information. I'll put in a name, maybe an image. And then once this record is committed, the trigger is going to flow, and I get a message in Slack. So that is the new record created, record updated, and record deleted trigger. Within each of the triggers, as you saw earlier with the Studio connector, we're providing the same trigger context, the step data. So here we have the operation type, the record itself, the fields within the record, as well as the table that the record is defined in, all available for you to use within your flow. Cool. Just want to ground us a little bit, though. If you want to see more about this, please head to Clay's session. We're showing it within Claris Connect because that is a technology that we know and love. But this technology, as Clay will be showing in his session, is available to all clients as part of the OData spec. So it's coming. It's very, very cool. It's something we've been waiting for quite a while. I don't want to leave you with just a bunch of promises, though. I want to give you folks some of the things that is available now. So available now, you can use publicly. The Studio connector provides both data level and user level triggers, provides more than 20 actions. And I'll leave this up for a second if you want to grab the link to the Getting Started section inside of Claris Connect. Everybody put their phones down when they're done.
OK. You could.
Well, one more. All right. The other, I want to make sure you know, is publicly available now. You can use everything we've shown you today now, except for the over-the-horizon stuff. Trigger by script works now within the FileMaker connector, as well as several actions, including some new ones, like the advanced record created, advanced update record, and get container link, upload to container, things that we haven't seen before in the FileMaker connector.
When did those ship?
It shipped on Thursday.
Just on Thursday.
Yeah. If you want to get to documentation, anyone want to grab this link? We feel good. Good? OK. If you have any questions after this session, because we're running very short on time, you can visit me and Bridget in the booth directly after this. We'd love to take your questions. We'd love to dive into more detail.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I think we touched on a lot this session in terms of building a use case and saving time. I'd like to challenge all of you to take this thinking of using both Studio and Connect with your FileMaker solutions to the rest of the sessions you have at this conference. And think of other use cases that it could apply to. And like Louis said, we'll be at the booth today and tomorrow, and we'll also be at the Renaissance Bar later tonight.
Good call.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.